Hey, Fandango readers, thank you so much for checking out The Family Room, and specifically the When Can I Watch column as we continue to experiment with video and have these open conversations about some of the biggest movies coming to theaters that we know you're going to want to share as a family. And if we're starting with the green lights section, which I like to do, then I have to say that the adaptation of Catching Fire from book to screen is absolutely one of the brightest green lights that we can talk about this week. It's just a fantastic adaptation. It literally follows the story so loyally. We get to see Katniss on the Victory Tour with Peeta, and we get to see the problems that she endures when she comes back to District 12, her give and take with the Capitol, personified by Donald Sutherland playing President Snow, and then of course it sets the stage for the 75th Quarter Quell, and Katniss and Peeta having to go back into the arena that they thought they were completely finished with, and strategize, maneuver to try and keep Peeta alive, maybe to keep both of them alive, and to bring some passion and some fire to this revolution, which is the point of the title, Catching Fire. The second green light that I want to talk about is the better production values from the first movie into this new one. The money that they earned on the first movie clearly went back into the special effects and the budget and the sets and the locations for this film. It looks really, really good. And I think that imaginative readers who want to go see what, a distinct and unusual place like the Capitol is going to look like on screen, they're going to see a fully realized vision of this world. Jennifer Lawrence absolutely is one of the brightest green lights of the series so far, and of course of Hollywood in general. I think she's one of our most exciting young actresses. And I think that she's one of the largest reasons why, audiences are responding to The Hunger Games in a way that they probably haven't to other franchises that are trying to launch from young adult series. She's such a gifted and talented actress. She makes all of the different emotions that Katniss Everdeen has to go through at different stages of this story just come to life. And it's hard to pinpoint what she's doing so well. Acting is such an ethereal thing to just put your finger on and say, oh, she's doing this perfectly. She runs through a whole range of emotions, and they're all very convincing in these scenes. And I think that, younger audiences who don't understand things like performance and just want to connect with a character are going to see a lot of things in Katniss and a lot of things in Jennifer Lawrence's performance that they'll want to celebrate, that they'll want to emulate, possibly. And I definitely think Lawrence continues to be one of the brightest green lights of the Hunger Games series as it works its way to the silver screen. There are red lights to discuss with the Hunger Games Catching Fire, which I think is really funny because the whole story is a red light. And it's hard to discuss what a specific red light is for something like The Hunger Games because the series, the plot, the entire narrative is about kids tossed into arena and having to fight to the death. Now, if that's not a red light for you and your family, then maybe you don't have as many concerns about the Hunger Games as I sort of do. But the story and the plot, if you're not familiar with it, is a definite red flag that needs to be addressed right off the bat, because Katniss obviously has to fight for her life in the arena. She was able to in the first one. She has to do it again here. There are murders. There are deaths in the Hunger Game, and that's, for people who are overly concerned about violence, that's a concern. I do want to point out, though, in the red flag section that Frances Lawrence wisely tones down or softens the violence that is part of the story and has to happen on screen. Gale's character is whipped in the square, the center square of District 12, and it's supposed to be a brutal scene, but it's not that terrifying. And I guess it could have been. It could have been a lot worse. I mean, if anyone has seen 12 Years a Slave, they know how devastating a whipping scene can be. But Hunger Games doesn't ever approach those levels, thankfully, because I think it knows what its target audience is. We do see characters die, but that's an important part of the story. But it's not something that's it's not overly gory. It's not overly gratuitous. It's part of the narrative, and it moves things along. But, if you're kind of familiar with where the story is supposed to go, and you're kind of familiar with the circumstances that these characters are going to have to endure, those red flags aren't quite as extreme, and maybe you've prepared yourself because you've read them on the page and you've already sort of pictured them in your brain, and they're not that extreme, which I think is what some parents might have to take into consideration when they're judging whether they should see Catching Fire with their kids. If your kids have read the books and enjoyed the books, and maybe you've had a discussion about some of the events that take place inside of them, then going to see Catching Fire is an easier exercise for you guys. You can go as a family. You can enjoy what I think is a really solid sequel in what seems to be a developing franchise and a powerhouse in Hollywood these days. So let's wrap up this week's column, and I'll break down the appropriate ages for The Hunger Games: Catching Fire in the section below.